The absolute biggest mental health crisis coming to America. Now, that's what one expert said, and we're going to dive a little deeper in what he actually means by that and how, truthfully, it could affect you, your safety, your livelihood so much. Not only that, we're going to talk about the shortage, a major shortage that just took place, and it's going to keep on taking place. It's actually been happening, of course, all year. We've talked about it, but it is now getting worse because of the things like the economy. We're going to talk about it and how it affects you, and it could be a life or death situation. I'm not joking. Then we're going to discuss the biggest financial benefit of 2024, what they're saying about a precious metal, one that I always talk about. And then we're going to dive into some more numbers, some more poll numbers that are coming out, and we're going to talk about the horrendous interview last night with Miss Harris. Let's dive into these stories today. There are some things in here that are serious and we need to talk about because it does depend on what happens to these things, and what happens next month is what's the way forward. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new to this channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up. Remember, when you subscribe to the channel, you are entered into a giveaway each and every month. We give something away on the first of the month, every month, hundreds of dollars worth of gifts. And we can't wait to share what those are for this month. Now, not only that, when you share our content or you give us a thumbs up, it tells YouTube that this is important. So please keep sharing our message, because our goal is to grow a community of like-minded individuals that want common sense and wants just some wisdom and wants to seek the best way forward as we try to bring our family through this crazy world that we live in. Now, let's talk about the stories of the day. First story, the interview, the horrendous interview from last night. Man, I'm telling you what, the incompetency of the left right now is unbelievable. Kamala is a train wreck. She is literally melting down. The number one trend on Twitter last night and this morning is Kamala's train wreck. That's all of Twitter. That's not just my my conservative skew. That's not just my algorithm. That is going across Twitter. Now, the sad thing is you still have people, some of the biggest leftists, that are trying to take up for her and talk about how great she did. Come on. If anybody watched that interview, no matter if you're left, right, middle, it does not matter. It was a train wreck. Her "let me be clear" was never clear. And the fact that she seemed mad the whole time and ill, and again, don't get me wrong, it's going to the other side. So I do give her credit. I think that she went to the other side because she is that desperate. There's new polls coming out that shows that Trump, after last night, has a 61% chance over a 30-something% for her. It went up by 2 or 3 points just after the interview, the betting markets. That's a big deal. Now, that runs right into the main story, the mental health crisis of America. Now, this is not a play on words. This is something that I think was pretty brilliantly said. Political analyst, and he was being interviewed, Mark Halperin, by Tucker Carlson. He says, this will be the biggest mental health crisis in America if Trump wins. The history as we know it will change because people will go crazy. Political analyst Mark Halperin predicts that America will experience the biggest mental health crisis in history if Trump wins the election, and it will lead to main violence. This is why I always tell you get out of the cities. Now, if you're part of this violence and you're part of the left, then stay in the cities. I don't care, because you think it's going to be fine. But if you're a conservative and you're living in these areas, if you have a business or a livelihood or you have a home in these areas, you're absolutely crazy to stay there. Because if Trump does win this, these cities will burn and these cities will go up in crazy chaos. He's a political analyst that knows these things, sees historical victories, historical losses, and he's calling it just like he sees it. If Trump wins, and he says actually Trump has the best chance of winning, he said it will be the biggest mental health crisis ever. Given that many Democrats think Trump winning again is the worst thing that can happen to this country, Carlson asked Halperin how Kamala Harris voters would react. He says, I say this non-flippantly, not trying to gain views or anything like that. He said, I think this will be the biggest problem ever. The pollster added that Trump's win could completely derail tens of millions of Americans' connection with the country and their fellow citizens. He's saying it will be a polarization. Now, Kamala already said the other day on an interview that she doesn't think that the elections are free and fair. What? The Democrats already saying that. Why do you think she's saying that? Because she sees the writing on the wall, and I think a lot of her political pundits and lefts are seeing the same thing. They can say all they want, but they all know how bad it was last night. Did you see Obama and Biden at Kennedy funeral yesterday? I don't know what they said. I would love to have a lip reader that I know personally that could read lips like that, but they were in a very, very definitive talk. And it was not friendly, it was not gesture, they were not talking about Kennedys. And I would imagine it has something to do with the coming 3 weeks. There's a lot. Actually, Biden looked a little bit more understandable of what was happening. At the same time, Barack was in a very serious confrontation with him. I think they're seeing the writing on the wall, and they know that when Trump wins, it could really upend their problems for the establishment. I believe he could change a lot of things, but not only that, I think you're going to see the masses, the polarized left, the 30%, 20%, the people who are diehard Kamala supporters and Barack supporters are going to take to the streets, and they're going to tear it slap up. Halpern went on and said that mental health professionals will be overwhelmed. People requiring support for trauma in the workplace, broken marriages, financial issues, alcoholism. Now, we're already having a lot of that. But what happens when people get excessive grief? And I know this because I deal with people all the time in the public. When people deal with grief and they get excessive about it, what happens is they become more of who they are. So if they have a problem with alcohol or with money or with credit or with infidelity, whatever they have problems with, they become more of it. If they're a mad person, they become more rage. Think about it. How many times have you seen liberals, literally run over people's yards just to hit a Trump sign? That's what I'm talking about. It's excessive, and that's exactly what we've built in this culture. The media, where they back the polarization to where then you're going to see all-out access of just absolute infighting between Americans. We're neighbor against neighbor, not in a war situation, but that it is a true hate for each other. That is what's happening to America. And you know who to thank for that? The political freaking class. I don't just blame the left. I blame both sides. They're building an infighting situation where they can keep power. Now, I think Trump upends that because his agenda is not the same as what the establishment for either side would be. And I think that scares the living crap out of them. Halpern says the country is not ready for what is coming if Trump beats Harris. They're not ready for what is coming, and you will see more and more problems, even down to where people can't even have normal birthdays, normal celebrations anymore, especially in the bigger cities. These people on this side believe that the fellow citizens that support Trump are fundamentally evil, and they should take it in their own hands. Think about that. That's some big, bold statements, but to be honest with you, what did we see when he won last time? What did we see 8 years ago? You don't think it's going to get worse? And talking about mental health, that kind of leads me to the next topic, a looming disaster. This is from the Wellness Company. It says, prescription drug shortage is possible as pharmacies are closing across America. Now, you remember I told you that Walgreens was closing over 1,000 stores. I think it's 1,300. It's like 25%. Rite Aid closing tons of stores. A lot of these are restructuring because of the way their payments are coming in, and also the fact that things are getting stolen from them in certain areas, especially in big cities. I walked in Walmart the other day. I had to buy something for my company, and and if you go to a pharmacy line, it was going. I bet you it was 50 or 60 people. It literally looked like they were getting on an amusement park ride. And it's because people cannot have access to those pharmaceuticals. And the risk of that is because we've built a culture around being on some kind of medicine. Most people depend on that medicine. That goes back to the mental health crisis that we were just talking about. But I want you to listen to this. The list of states that are impacted just by Rite Aid's closures and how it will affect the fact of the fact that they can't get as much medicine as they once did. Michigan, Ohio, Washington, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Virginia, New Hampshire, California, Maryland, Idaho, New York, Oregon, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Connecticut, Nevada. That's just a few states that are affected by the Rite Aid situation that took place. That's not counting Walgreens. That's not counting your personal pharmaceuticals that are closing each and every day in our local towns. I know in our local town, a lot of the smaller mom and pop shops are closing because they can't get reimbursements or is not getting paid enough, or the insurances are cutting them. Remember, our pharmacies and our drugs are made overseas. This is that most Americans are dependent on medicine of some sort. Over 75% of people depend on some type of medicine. Now, that's a whole nother video saying that we shouldn't be dependent on medicine that much, but if it's coming from overseas or in shortages because of the fact of the closures, what are we to do? Now, you can go to any company, but you better make sure you're buying from, you better be buying some emergency preparedness medicine. Now, this is not a sales pitch. I could care less who you buy it from. I buy from Jace. I literally bought 2 cases last week, one in Aiden's name and one in Misty's name. It's called a kid's case, and then Misty got a reorder because when we go on vacations, we take it, and we've used some of it over time because of being sick and so forth. Now, some of those medicines are antibiotics. Some of those are life-saving medicines. You better look into it. I like Jace. It's just who I've dealt with for all the years, but there's tons. There's wellness, there's duration. The point is, you need to understand that there's a major shortage, and the more people are on medicine, the more problems it's going to cause when there is none. Do you know how crazy people get when they cannot get something that they have had for so long? It could be life-saving or it could be codependency. Either way, it could cause a major problem too for America. This is where it becomes real serious about this election, because Trump seems like he's going to win in a landslide, and he should. Honestly, he should. I want you to listen to this. He says they put Bannon in prison, Navarro in prison. They're trying to bankrupt Gateway Pundit. They indicted CFO from Epic Times. They investigated Elon Musk. They put Donald Trump in prison, or are trying to put him in prison. They tried to disbar, or did disbar, a few of the lawyers: Jeff Clark, John Eastman, Rudy Giuliani. They spied on the Catholic Church. They arrested the doctor who blew the whistle in the Texas hospital, performing things on kids. They put concerned parents on watch lists from schools that were pulling up the fact that they wanted their children in education, not indoctrination. They imprisoned 1,500 protesters in a nonviolent offense in January of a few years ago. And now there's been attempts on Donald's life. They're not going to stop. So what we're dealing with is some tough times. You got to be ready for that. Now, last story I want to mention, and then we're going to wrap it up. Good news, and again, something you need to look into. Kind of like the medicine, as I tell you to buy things, and I tell you the severity of the situations to cause you to prep, this is another one. If you can't buy gold, I understand. But gold is skyrocketing right now. It's getting worth more and more. That's not because people are just so excited to buy it. It's because they're hedging against other means of currency. Now, the dollar surged this last week. It had a good week. But it's everything dealing with any monetary theory in any kind of currency is based on a debt-based system and not true worth. It's based on trust of governments and not the actual worth of what the paper is. Our dollar is only worth what the government says it's worth. They're actually wanting to shut down BRICS, and they said they can do it by basically political reasons across the world and geopolitical events. That means there's going to be a lot of chaos. And currencies is how the world works. What are we to do? Don't rely on digitized currencies. Don't rely just on cash. Don't just rely on money in the bank. Don't just rely on your debit or credit cards or your apps. Try to pick up some gold and silver, because these are true wealth. Remember, if you think they're too high now, they're not going to get any cheaper. It's good to pick up some gold, good to pick up some silver, because every other country is doing it. Again, tons of gold providers. I like Genesis Gold just because they're a Christian-based organization, and I know the owner I've talked to. We've had conversations. A great company, and he raises his kids like I raise my kids. He wants to see a better life for his kids. So when we learn from current events, that helps us be better. Why do we have animals like we showed you yesterday on the video? Because we know the push against meat. Why do we buy gold? Because the push against the fact of wanting to go digitize. Why do we buy emergency medicine? Because we know that our medicine system is in a bad shape. And to be honest with you, we don't take any medicine. My wife and I don't, and my kids don't. But I want to have it just in case, so therefore I buy it for preparedness. Why do I think things are going to get worse? Because people like this political analyst, Halperin, said, if Trump wins this thing, you talk about chaos and riots in the cities, you hadn't seen anything. And that scares me. Now, does it worry me to a point where my spiritual being is worried? No, because I know, again, we trust in Christ. But don't believe that it does not scare us enough and frantic us enough to make sure that we're making wise decisions. Because remember, I'm raising 6 kids. I want to make sure they have the best life possible, and I'm going to take care of them. The point of our videos is just that, so we can be better. Let me know what you're thinking on these videos. Are you worried about the shortage with medicine? Are you trying to buy? Are you worried about the fact of currency? Are you trying to buy something different? Are you trying to stockpile and put up? Are you worried about the fact that in 3 weeks it could be the biggest mental health crisis in America from someone who's an expert in this field? Don't take light of that, because our cities, especially our cities, will be a problem. Guys, thank you for watching. God bless.